This presentation is, or will consist of a extemporaneous, naive postulation of what um, a applied Heidegger in quotation marks, the rubric Heidegger, the name over the teaching in those 100 or so texts. There's also, by the way, in parentheses, apparently I learned more and more that there's more additional texts that don't even appear in the Gesamtaufgabe or in the complete works. There's like all kinds of notes people have taken and things that weren't included that are material and in some way give guidance to an orientation or a theory of Heidegger. Theory of Heidegger. I think something like when we follow the classical principle that you must, to translate a text, you must have a full knowledge of the text and knowledge of, and of course, the knowledge of the language. Then we get something like the translation that's going to come out soon, the Thomas Sheehan translation, which is at the same time an interpretation, and he calls it a paraphrasing of Sein und Zeit. That's what I have in mind, sort of a theory of Heidegger, something like that. But to go back to the original contention that there could be an applied Heidegger. So first of all, people will say there can't be, I would say the most naive people will not know any, one way or the other, are the neophytes. But I think the neophytes already pick up the idea that Heidegger is not a political. See, they don't even have this. They'll say Heidegger isn't something that can be applied immediately, right? Because Heidegger isn't doing what the traditional philosophers do. And then if you go a little bit, then if you learn a little bit more, then you'll probably say something like Heidegger's not doing what he called ontic philosophy. And then you might give an interpretation of ontic philosophy as the kind of philosophy Plato was doing when he posited principles such as this notion that there's some conditions that we could call mental impairment, where the regular laws don't stand. Like that simple, straightforward, simple in that it's straightforward and that everybody seems to have to confront it in some way. Do all the normal ways of doing things stand if the person you're dealing with is obviously temporarily mentally deranged? That kind of question. And then that there'd be an answer to it, and that this answer, even though it would be subject to all the usual difficulties of casuistry or reading that principle into actual life, determining what it means in terms of law, but also determining what the facticity is that links up with that. Yeah, there would be nothing like, so that one gets soon the impression there's nothing like this in Heidegger, which is somewhat wrong. So first of all, Gadamer says we would be doing Heidegger an injustice if we didn't think of him as having politics in some sense. But it's correct that Heidegger can't do exactly the same thing because of this reason of being an ontic, of saying the tradition was merely ontic, but now we have Jaspers, maybe Kierkegaard. No, Kierkegaard he says is ontic, but now Jaspers and himself are doing something else. But then here's the point. Jaspers says, in your philosophy, Heidegger, Jaspers and Heidegger were close friends and discussed one another's philosophy very deeply between each other. And Jaspers said, I missed a positive aspect in your philosophy, Heidegger. So in other words, Heidegger is no longer producing he's gone back even before any theory of being able to produce a proposition or a statement, a sentence, to say something which is in some way certain, positive, that could stand there and act as a rule, or in some way even as groomed as a principle, in some way. Um, so that's true, but yet at the same time, now that the point is, um, yeah, it's not true that we can't still use this to guide ourselves in our political action, what we call political action. Um, I mean, what should the concept of the political itself, or the ideal political, or the political taken better, but political taken. So if we're acting like Heidegger, then we would think, what's happening with the political, and we'd say there's something under discussion. What's all the discussion about the political? Like, for instance, a part of that would be, what's all the discussion about accelerationism, or about populism, or whatever it may be. But the bigger thing would be the political, and then we'd say this is somehow, this is a meaning, this is a subject matter we have before us, this is a phenomenon, and then we investigate it. That would be a Heideggerian way of acting, but not just when we're doing philosophy, but straightforwardly. So that's an example of applied Heidegger.